Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you. Featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I have the great fortune to have my friend Maudene Nelson back on my show. Maudine is a dietitian-nutritionist who knows her stuff. Today she's going to speak about the key recommendations for healthy eating patterns. And she's going to give us so much information and education that you're going to want to listen to the whole show. So I want to welcome Maudene Nelson to the Susan Brender Show. Welcome, Maudene.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for having me back. I love to chat. I love to talk about nutrition. This is like a happy moment.
Oh, see, happy for me too, because boy, do I need your help. But that's after the show. Now, let's talk about the dietary guidelines. They're from 2015 to 2020. So start with, what are the key recommendations for healthy eating patterns that should be applied to in their entirety? What does that mean?
So it says that if you look at the whole population, and we're all geographically slightly, we vary by gender, we vary by age, but healthy people, all the studies show, are going to do best if the majority of the foods we select include, number one, variety. And the variety means, first of all, lots of vegetables. Anytime I'm in a diner or any place that's kind of fast turnover food, the food is all brown. It's brown fried French fries. It's brown fried onion rings. It's brown fried meat. It's brown edged bread, but the bread is usually white. And the deal is that most of us really need lots more colorful produce, lots more dark green, red, orange, yellow things on our plate. That, of course, means lots of, any of the lettuces and the raw things, the cooked things. It also includes beans because, even though we think of beans as starchy, they're still excellent food. They have B vitamins, they have fiber, they have protein, and you can get beans in lots of different colors. And fruits. But particularly, let's make sure this is clear, a whole fruit is far better than a fruit juice. Even a smoothie, even I make it myself, I fresh squeeze it, anything. Don't go for the okey doke, eat the whole fruit. Yes, you're going to get fruit stuff in your fingernails, but do it. It's the whole fruit.
Wait a minute. Let me interrupt you, Maudene. Now, you just mentioned smoothies. Now, smoothies, you can put the whole fruit in a smoothie. Doesn't that matter? I mean, and does that actually do the real thing? What you're talking about is a whole fruit. So,
well, I'll take it from a couple of angles. Yes, if you're just saying the mass quantities, which sounds a little bit like the cone heads from Saturday Night Live. Yes, if you put a whole fruit in a blender and you drink it, you're getting a whole fruit.
Okay.
But the truth is you really need more of the foods that are the fiber in a form that isn't so finely pureed, so where the particle of fiber is not so tiny. So when you choose something, obviously you don't get it nearly as fine as you do when it comes out of a blender. So number one, you really do it's better to have the whole fruit. Mm-hmm. The blender or the smoothie also encourages you to consume a lot more of that fruit or that fruit group than you would if you were eating a whole fruit. If I ate a whole orange, I most likely would say, okay, fine, that was good, I'm done. But if I put an orange in a blender, minus the seeds, it would come out to about a third of a cup. And then I'm thinking, well, that's not enough. Bring me 3 more oranges so I can, make this like a real beverage. And then you're really over-consuming a reasonable amount of calories. So I don't buy for the smoothies. You have to give me a really good argument why that smoothie is better than eating a piece of whole fruit.
Okay, now hold on. Now, when you talk about the whole fruit, what does that mean for you talked about oranges. So do you put the rind in, or the same thing with apples? Do you eat the whole apple with its shell and what is
its core? And so
its core,
I understand your point. That's a good one to say. Let's be not just literal but specific about what we mean by whole fruit. So I don't think I would put the whole banana because the banana peel, although it's It's got some interesting history with some psychoactive compounds in the banana peel. That would not be part of my definition of whole fruit. Let's just consider it the whole edible part of the fruit. I would not bother with the apple core if I'm eating an apple, but I do eat the skin. Mm-hmm. And so that's if we said a pear, we mean the whole pear minus the parts that are, crunchy and funny.
Right.
Or the orange rind. My mom used to make wonderful orange rind candy. I've seen Martha Stewart do it on YouTube and on her website. Uh-huh. But as far as the fruit eating goes, I don't think we need to count the rind in there as part of the whole. So the idea of being whole is whole versus juice.
Mm-hmm. I hear you.
Yeah.
Now, what are the best fruits? I mean, is there such a thing as the best fruits?
Well, there are. Somehow folks love to make superfood lists, like we have to have superheroes, we have to have superfood, we have to have super automobiles, I don't know. I think variety, once again, is really important when it comes to eating fruits and vegetables. If you don't eat variety, it's not a bad thing, but so you're looking for a combination of things which can give you good vitamins, an array of different vitamins. So a food like banana may not have much vitamin C, while a food like mango or orange does. Mm-hmm. Whereas a food like banana is really a good potassium source. So I would just say think of color. And while this is a side campaign from the actual dietary guidelines for Americans, which was put together with the American Heart Association and the National Institute of Health, Institute of Medicine, so that these were people who have reviewed all the research to come up with these recommendations. While they sound a little predictable, mm-hmm. they really are based on some science. So back to the idea of fruits and vegetables, the color is really, use that as your kind of your compass of did you get variety. Think of the colors of the flag, red, white, and blue. Mm-hmm. So red apple, red tomato, red cherries, red strawberries, red.
Did you say bread?
Well, I would say red onion. Red.
Oh, red.
As in the color red. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So we're talking fruits and vegetables. Red peppers. Okay. White. So the inside of a banana could be considered white potato, white onion. The inside of a pear could be considered white. So red, white, and blue. And blue, purple are a group. So that would be blueberries. It could be eggplant. It could be purple grapes. It could be purple onion, purple cabbage. And then red, white, blue. So those are the three colors of the flag. But the other two colors that you want to make sure you get at least a mouthful every day would be the greens and the oranges. Mm-hmm. So red, white, blue, green, and orange. And that could be a nice big salad or medium salad. That could be a couple of fruits. Mm-hmm. That it doesn't count as that little puny slice of tomato and that leaf of lettuce on your ginormous, turkey sandwich.
Right.
It's really about getting in a mouthful a day of those five colors, red, white, blue, green, and orange. And the orange-yellow are the same guys. Mm-hmm. So the other things, I'm sorry.
No, what I wanted to know is that you mentioned nightshade fruits and vegetables like eggplant. Is it true that they can be harmful to you in any way?
There has been contentious suggestions that the eggplant, tomato, potato, and pepper, those are the nightshade vegetables, may increase the tenderness and swelling of joints with people who have inflamed joints. Now, that means that there's probably something valid because it isn't just coming out of the air. There have to be people who say, yes, it makes a difference. But any attempt to prove it with like a double-blind study hasn't been conclusive. So here would be my clinical opinion on that. Mm-hmm. If you have an inflammatory condition and you want to see if a food is making it worse or omitting that food could make it better, give yourself a clean 7 days, maybe even 14 days without any of those foods in that botanical group. And by the way, that botanical group also includes tobacco. Mm-hmm. So tomato, potato, eggplant, peppers, tobacco, and there probably are a few others that if I went digging could find more, but those are the basic ones in the supermarket. Avoid them, and if you have the impression that your swelling and joint tenderness or any inflammation in the body has improved, you nailed it, and it's the best to continue. And if you, you hap upon a beautiful Mediterranean salad, which is diced cucumber and diced tomato with a little lemon juice and some parsley, and you eat that, and you shouldn't have a total relapse. It should be okay. That's such a wonderful salad. I hate to discourage anyone from eating it.
Yeah.
And while we're talking inflammation and anti-inflammatory, there is a group of foods that has been supported with medical evidence that can improve. It may improve some people more dramatically and others less so. But foods like ginger in any form, ginger powder, ginger tea, ginger that you would sprinkle on your other foods, if you just scrape the ginger root into water and let it simmer very gently and drink that. Turmeric, which is like a ginger's cousin. The omega-3 fats, which are predominantly the ones that you're going to get in fish, notably icosapentaenoic acid or EPA. Those seem to be demonstrably anti-inflammatory. And then there are foods which may promote inflammation. And before I cut out my tomato and potato and eggplant, let's look at the promoting inflammation foods. And those are the fats that have been hydrogenated, which would be the solid fats.
Okay, hold on a minute, Maudine. Define that word for us.
Hydrogenated?
Correct.
Gladly. So, the simplest explanation in very few words is vegetable fats which have been artificially hardened. So, if I once had a gallon of soybean oil and through a very specific process, which has been around for decades, I transform that liquid soybean oil into a solid fat, and now it would look more like the white in the can, or it would look like margarine, or it may have, you may never see it, but it's partly done because the more you convert the liquid to a solid, the more stable that fat is. It won't break down under ultraviolet light, and it may not break down under heat, and it's more stable to humidity. So if the food industry wants their products to stay on the shelf, or at least when they are purchased by the consumer, not to have off flavors or to have any discernible changes in their texture or taste, the hardened fats will give them a better shot at a long shelf life food. So where are you going to find it? And it's always on the label by the information. It will say partially hardened or partially hydrogenated. And the trans fat that is created through this process of hardening or converting the liquid to a solid is also on the nutrition facts label under total fat. It says trans fat. So that there is good evidence that trans fats promote signals that can enhance inflammation. Now, inflammation sounds very vague as well. All of us have inflammatory processes that continue throughout the day in our bodies. If I am a little careless and I scratch myself with, the edge of a shelf or something, and I now have a scratch on my arm, my body will have a inflammatory response to begin to heal that wound. It's a little wound, but it begins. So we have inflammatory responses that go on 24 hours a day through our lifetimes. What we don't want are excessive inflammatory signals in our body, because that seems to put the body under undue stress.
Right. Maudine, does it matter if you're old or young? How does this all work? If you're young, does it have the same kind of reaction as it would in an elderly person?
I don't know that fact, But I would guess that we older folk are going to have a more pronounced, or our bodies won't defend itself against things like that as easily as the younger people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
we really should eat good.
Yeah, that's right. Now, there is a new thing that I see literally around the world is farm to table. A lot of people are now going to farm-to-table restaurants, and they're getting all kinds of veggies and all kinds of fruits, as you mentioned, and that seems to be a trend. What do you think about this idea of farm-to-table?
I love it in every way, shape, and form. If some of the population cannot afford it, then I would like to see kind of an adaptation of it in locally. But what it sounds like is you may, in the month of March, find certain vegetables in the farm-to-table type restaurants that you won't find in September or another time of the year, because they're not necessarily buying produce that's been grown somewhere else in the world and shipped to a local wholesaler where you buy it. Mm-hmm. And that does a few things. There are fascinating suggestions that the locally grown food also contains microorganisms which are important to the locally grown people. Yeah. That if we have, even when you're eating washed vegetables, there's still kind of a microorganism pool that's still around those foods. And that's good, not mm-hmm. to worry about, oh my Lord, did they not prepare my food in a hygienic way. So that would be a good reason to have locally grown. It also makes sure that some of those foods are not going, those foods are not going to get their seeds lost to the, into the ages. Mm-hmm. But whatever those unusually shaped zucchini or tomatoes or potatoes, here I go back to those nightshades. Any of the kinds of produce that might have been available locally, but it kind of got eclipsed by the big stuff that you always get at the big grocery store. Mm-hmm. Those fruits and vegetables that are hybrid in order to ship well and to store well and mm-hmm. to do that. Those little local ones that you see at farmers markets, and if you have a community-supported agriculture or a CSA membership, right. They look gnarly and funny, and why is this yellow when I thought it was supposed to be brown, or why is it brown when I thought it would be green?
Yeah, yeah.
And those are fine. They really are important for us to continue to consume. So I encourage that. How do we try to get that to happen in sections of the country, whether they're urban or suburban or rural, where people aren't going to have that opportunity? And I think there's where we want to bring in some creative thought. Mm-hmm. And it might be a little romantic to think that in the middle, we can do urban farms. I've participated in activities at many in the Bronx, in Philadelphia, Washington, and they're great. Mm-hmm. The more the better. Make use of unused land. Let people have no connection to agriculture kind of see the seed to the table. The more of that, the better. I'm not sure if that's going to be the solution, but the more, the better.
Right. Now, let me stop you for a second. What I want you to do before you go on to grains and dairy and various other things, I want you to tell our audience, if you were sitting down and thinking about what you want to eat today, just think about it. What would be the thing that you would recommend? What turns you on? I mean, because I'm going to use that word "turns you on" because food is yeah. great. I mean, how many people food is like number one on their list? That's all they think about.
Yeah,
especially me.
Food is a drug. Let's get serious. There are people who say I just live to eat, and people who say I eat to live. And all of us are somewhere along that spectrum. And what I would say I would like to look forward to, and now we're going to do seasonal chat because it is mm-hmm. where I am right now. It's 86 degrees, mm-hmm. which is fabulous to me. I think heat is just the biggest blessing ever. I'm not a winter girl.
Come to Florida, Maudine. We have 96 degrees. You'll love it.
And yes, I really will. So it would be something that doesn't require cooking. And I could be happy with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with some diced up mixed of vegetables and fruits. You could find local melons. You can get local cucumbers. Some of them are already local. Most may be another month or so away. But the light salad, a peanut butter and jelly. I also like things hot. So I think it would be nice to always, have a light soup. Mm-hmm. And if my husband does the cooking, which I'm very fortunate that he does a fair amount here, most of it in our home, we will definitely get some kind of green vegetable and protein. And I make a joke. I say, what dead animal are we having tonight? So it could well be chicken cutlet. It could be some tuna fish out of the can made into a salad. It could be sardines. And then most likely it's going to be chicken cutlet or meatballs. Right?
Yeah, right.
So I also keep in mind those colors. And if I were to identify my food, which is something that I would, as they say, how do you determine how desperate you are? Would you go out in a blizzard at 1 o'clock in the morning? And the answer is yes. And my food is popcorn.
Popcorn, I love popcorn. Popcorn has a lot of fiber, doesn't it?
Yes, it's good stuff. I mean, you can damage it, shall we say, with a ton of salt and butter. And I will also confess, if you don't put something on it, it does taste like styrofoam probably tastes. So there's ways to sort of jazz it up, but there's something about that crunch and that thing that is so wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I would look forward to those kinds of foods today.
Right. Now, for me, it's a no-brainer. But what do you think of people who, not the people, but people who buy things in cans? Is there? I mean, they can buy green beans, they can buy peas, they can buy carrots, all kinds of things, but they come in a can. Now, is there anything that is good about that?
Yes, it's good. The can story has a few different bullet points. So one would be, if it was canned peas or canned string beans versus Doritos, yes, I used a brand name. Should I be a little more generic, like a salted, artificially colored, deep-fried chip? I think the canned string beans are a mile ahead. Okay. Does your brain and does your mouth want string beans the way it wants chips? Of course not.
Right.
But I don't pick a fight with eating canned produce.
Okay.
We have pardon me.
No problem.
The changes are going to be in the kind of plastic that's used on the inside of the can. That's part of what protects the vegetable from the metal of the can.
Oh.
But canning as a word is generic, and it could relate to using both a jar or a metal can. In fact, it also includes using a pouch, which could be made of paper or foil. Mm-hmm. So in a way, it does provide you with food with a very long shelf life, which is still pretty safe and nutritious.
Right.
As long as they're there for kind of, in case we can't get to the store, but even better would, of course, be having fresh.
Mm-hmm. Maudine, when you started as a nutritionist dietitian, was the advice that you gave to your students and to people who were your clients any different than they are now? How has it changed? What's your message?
I love that question. I think because I began doing my nutrition education in the 70s, one of the things was about infant feeding, and we definitely encourage earlier the field said, introducing solid foods early, like 3 a month or so. I think now the recommendation is to breastfeed as long as possible, formula feed up to 6 months, and then introduce solid food later. So that's definitely an area that's changed, or as far as the recommendations. We were, at that time, we've always encouraged more fruits and vegetables. In fact, most of the older set might remember the 4 food group poster that was on the wall in the school cafeteria and the nurse's office. You know, elementary, junior, and senior high school is the ultimate equalizer of all of us, and after that we all become crazy. So what's changed is more emphasis, not taking the importance of having dairy foods in the diet away, but putting them lower on the scale of essential, and higher should be the produce, the fruits, the vegetables, because it turns out that that's what most people are eating less of. Mm-hmm. So I would say, and back in the day, partly owing to the fact that some of those 4 food group posters were printed and distributed by the dairy industry, so therefore the dairy was at the top of the picture.
Right.
The beef and the meat industry similarly were sharing the top billing. We want to emphasize now that we don't need anywhere near as much meat as what we eat because it tastes good and because in our country it's affordable. Mm. If you look at the palm of your hand and just simply imagine no fingers, that palm of your hand is, as far as animal protein, meaning chicken, fish, turkey, veal, pork, lamb, that's all you need in a day.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But most of us have that much at a meal, if not more, and then a second meal, and perhaps even a third meal. So the kind of style of eating that is now the darling of the world, and I'm not making a sarcastic joke to say the darling,
right,
but is that Mediterranean diet. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't say you shouldn't eat meat, but you should try to eat simply less, and encouraging the use of more vegetables and fruits in both raw and cooked form, so some salads, some side dishes, using the monounsaturated fat-rich oils, which in the Mediterranean, of course, is olive oil.
Right.
We could also see using sesame oil, peanut oil, canola oil, which is similar in its fatty acid, similar, not identical, in its fatty acid profile. Mm-hmm. But mostly if we ate similar to that kind of, it's now the poster child, the Mediterranean diet, showing that a fourth of your plate has the protein and a fourth to a third of your plate has your starch, whether it's pasta, noodles, or potato or some other starchy food. And the remainder of your plate is some variety of vegetables in any form of prep that you like. If you want them out of a can, okay. If you want them frozen and microwaved, okay. If you want them fresh and simmered yourself or roasted, I confess I was never a huge fan of Brussels sprouts until I was shown, try roasting them, and now, yeah,
they're pretty good,
I welcome them.
Now,
yeah, they're not pretty good. They're great.
They're great. I know. I do the same thing. I actually put cauliflower also in my oven, and boy, is it wonderful. Now, hold on a second. I want to dispel a myth, because you and I have talked about this before, but I think it's very important for our audience to know. When you speak about grains, and we're talking about bread, we're talking about spaghetti or pasta of any sort, you seem to think it's okay to eat that, even if you feel that it's making you fat. Is it? How do you feel about eating bread or eating all those pastas each day? Do you recommend them, or do you say stay away from them?
I wouldn't go stay away. I would sort of play out with how much, what's the proportion relative to everything else on the plate. So if you are if you're serving yourself a large plate of pasta and a fair amount of meat, but there was no veggies, or the veggies could be counted with 4 fingers, like 4 pieces of broccoli or 4 string beans, then it's sort of a disproportionate amount. It's not that the pasta is bad. So even for someone who is trying to put their diet in shape because of their diabetes, or someone who has insulin resistance that might be related to their diabetes, or might some women with polycystic ovarian syndrome. There are people who may get, who physically may respond to carbohydrates, meaning potato and pasta and rice and bread. All the recommendation is not that they take them out, but that you cut them back and replace them more with beans and the veggies. I keep saying veggies, and I'm sure someone's eyes are rolling. Mm-hmm. So to kind of villainize or the veggie pictures, like there's nobody that's saying the vegetables are perfect and if you eat vegetables you're going to live forever.
Right.
But it's just that they're mostly missing, and they're very important to our body's overall needs and food uses. And that includes mushrooms. Mm-hmm. You know, it includes anything green. I love watching cooking shows where little bits of this are all kind of combined together. There's almost a ballet of color as well as texture, as well as flavor, as opposed to what I love, what we all love, like a hamburger and fries, which isn't really a ballet of flavor, color, and texture. We just need to dress that up too. Mm-hmm.
So when you recommend a way to kind of cook for yourself or for your family each day, you just say, okay, cut down the amount that you're giving on a plate and just include greens, as you said, and fruits and things like that. So it's very simple. Mm-hmm. It's pretty simple, isn't it?
Simplify. The more simple, the better. If anyone wants to see images of how it can look delicious and appealing and not requiring skills or a very fancy kitchen and lots of tools, then I would just Google plate method images. You know, when you can flip to Google, and you'll get tons of inspiring, simple pictures of the things that you ordinarily have somewhere or can get your hands on in the next couple of hours, and then turn them into really appealing, fiber-rich but lower in calorie and higher in nutrients type plates. And something that the plate method also sort of says very subtly is eat on a plate. Not just to have a quarter of your meal protein and a quarter or so of your food starches and the rest fruits and vegetables, but not out of styrofoam or aluminum or paper bag or aluminum foil or something like that, just really like on a plate. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I live in an urban area, right, and I observe people eating in their laps on the subway. I observe people eating as they walk down the street. I won't even start with the disposable junk that is never going to get properly recycled. That's yet another thing. Right. But what is going on is there's the cues to are you full or are you still hungry are completely lost because all the environmental cues are overwhelming. Right. If you're checking to see if your stop is coming, you're checking to see if your beverage is going to spill onto your clothes, whatever. Yeah, right. And kids who might be waiting for the school bus or coming home from the school bus, everybody wanted a treat when they got out of school, don't get me wrong. Right. But here we are, again, taking in foods which don't really satisfy, but beyond the mouth. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem for calorie balance and just general sense of appreciation of real food versus other. I would encourage you and your listeners to YouTube and watch a video called Imagine a Child.
Imagine a Child.
Imagine a Child. It's an animation, but I'm not sending you to a superhero thing. This is a 2-minute and 47-second sort of rethink the whole idea of what do we like for snacks and what's available and how it's priced. Yeah. Imagine a Child.
It sounds interesting. Now, we don't have much more time, Maudine. So what else is there that we've left out of this discussion that you think is really, really important? Because I'm going to invite you back, as you know, But it's very important that we leave our audience with something that is going to really affect the way they eat.
Okay. No pressure there.
Sorry. I know. It's a very general question and a big one.
Well,
but
if I were to say it in a real fair way, it's make small changes and do lots of small changes gradually. Like do something today, do something next week, and then continue to do those and try something new. Like if you're thinking about your meat, can you cut it down? Mm-hmm. Cut the portions down, and then do that like 3 meals a week, and then maybe 4. Maybe move to a 1 day of no meat at all. And this is not my message saying meat is bad. We're just trying to say try to rearrange the food in your diet so that there's more of the fruits and vegetables, the huge variety of fruits and vegetables. Add 1 fresh fruit every day. And maybe do that for a week, and then add 1 new vegetable that you never tried before. And let me say, well, I don't know how to cook it. Mm-hmm. Hit YouTube. YouTube has the best tutorials on cooking. Some of them are crazy, but at least you get some ideas. Or if you know how to boil an egg, you know how to boil a vegetable.
Right.
It's all the same.
So today, what are you going to make? What's your diet today?
Today, I want to get on my bike and go riding. So most likely I will pack a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, maybe a cheese stick, which it's very warm so that won't last forever, and water.
There you go.
And for a meal later on with my hubby, we will probably have some leftovers because that's so much easier.
Of course.
And they will include probably chicken and probably string beans or broccoli and sweet potatoes, because you can pop a sweet potato in the microwave. You never have to heat up your kitchen. In the microwave for 2 to 4 minutes, kind of depending on your microwave and depending on your sweet potatoes, and you've got love wrapped up in a skin. It really, really is good.
That's great. Now, you eat the skin of the sweet potato, correct?
I scrub them, but I will say that because the sweet potato, unless it's organic, sweet potatoes sprout. That's one of the things that makes them funny. They start getting little, you know how you could put them in a jar and wait for the vines to grow?
Sure.
And so some sweet potatoes are coated slightly with a sprout retardant. Because otherwise, if I was the sweet potato grower, I would harvest these beautiful sweet potatoes, and then 3 weeks from now, when I guess I'm approximating 3 weeks, when they show up in the supermarket and then they sit in your house, they look funny, and then someone says, well, I'm not buying sweet potatoes anymore. They have all these green things growing out of them. So you have a sprout retardant. So I just make sure I scrub real good to get that stuff off.
Right.
It's not going to hurt me, but I don't,
Yeah.
I want a sprout.
That's right.
Yes,
well,
so yes, I eat the skin.
So today my guest has been a friend of the Susan Brender Show. Her name is Maudene Nelson. She's a dietitian, nutritionist, and boy, does she have a lot to say. So thank you so very much, Maudene Nelson, for being on the Susan Brender Show, and please come back soon. It was a pleasure again. Thank you, Maudene.
Thank you for listening to the Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.